Welcome back to the channel. You know what it is. We're back for another video. Obviously, you see the title, you see the thumbnail, so we all know what's going on. But let's pretend we don't. We're going to be at 3 different sessions at Maryland Live, MGM, and a couple hands from the app that I played in the club. This is the club right here. Obviously, details in the description if you want to play. There'll be some hands from there. But anyways, let's just get right to the felt and show you about the most incredible run that I've ever had. Let's get right to it. In this first hand, we have a premium. We're looking down at ace queen offsuit. So when there's a original raise to $15, that's pretty small. So that's not showing a lot of strength. I decided to 3-bet this up to ace queen like I should. And weirdly enough, this older gentleman decides to give us a cold call, and the original raiser decides to call as well. So going 3 ways to a flop, it is 7-8-3 rainbow. So on this board, I know that I could have all the aces, the kings, or the queens. But at the same time, this cold call kind of gave me a reason to pause. So I unfortunately just check. Definitely should be putting out a c-bet here. And when he puts out a bet of $60, with that sizing, I don't think that he's bluffing. So I think about it for a second, should I peel? But I just decided to give it up. Not the best way to play ace queen. So maybe we can adjust in the next hand. You would think this is deja vu because the same player from last hand raised to $15. And when it gets to me, I 3-bet once again. I don't go as large, I go to $55, but I still want to just take this pot down now or just go heads up in position with the betting lead. But unfortunately, another older gentleman decides to cold call my $55 raise, and so does the original raiser. So once again, I'm not going to make the same mistake as I put out a c-bet of $55 because I could still have all of the aces, king, queen, jacks, etc. So I put out a bet of $55, and the older gentleman looks like he wants to call, but then decides to fold, and the original raiser gets out the way, and we take down the pot. Probably could have did this in the first hand and would have been up a little bit more, but now we're just about even. So it is what it is. Let's move on to the next one. Moving along, we have a very pretty hand, ace-9 suited on the button. And when there is a cutoff raise to $20, I could be putting a 3-bet here since it's such a late position raise. However, I just decided to call in position, and this brings along the big blind player who decides to come along as well. So we are off to a flop, which is 8-7-3 with 2 spades. So we have the nut flush draw along with backdoor straight draws and an overcard, which might be good. So anyways, it checks to the pre-flop raiser, and he decides to check it to me. And this is where I feel like I make my first mistake. I should definitely be putting in a bet when he checks to me, because him checking to me means he probably doesn't have an overpair. So we can rule out aces, kings, or queens because they would want to bet. Now, we could have a hand like ace-king that's going to call one street, but that's fine. We'll be able to get him off of those type of hands later on. And we have so much backdoor equity along with front door equity. This is definitely where I should place a bet. But I just decided to check it back, and we are off to a turn, which is the king of diamonds. So that's very unfortunate. It connects with him way more than it would connect with me. So when the big blind player checks and it gets to him, he puts out a bet of $20. Now that's a pretty small bet. If you hit a king, you would probably bet a little bit larger than that with flush and straight draws on the board. So now that I'm looking back at it, I think that was a sizing tell, and I should have raised that and just attacked it myself. However, with so much equity, I just decided to call to see if I can hit an ace or maybe a spade, which would be more preferable. And we are off to the river 3 ways once again, and it is a queen, a black one, but it is a club, unfortunately. And it checks to me, and I could be putting in a bet here, but I think that he could have a king here a lot of times, or maybe a hand like ace-queen, and he probably will call me for most sizing. So I decided to check it back and giving up, and unfortunately, the big blind player had jack high, and the pre-flop raiser had pocket sixes, which is going to be good here, but I am 1,000% sure I could have gotten him off of his hand if I would have bet the flop and put some pressure on that turn, or if I would have raised the turn. So many ways I could have got him off this hand. Even if I just bet the river, I would have got him off the hand. So it's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Sometimes when you're gun shy, you see what happens. You lose to hands that you normally wouldn't. But what can I do? Let's just move on. In this first hand at 1-3, we see a suited Broadway holding of queen 10 of spades. Even though this is at the bottom of my under the gun opening range, it's still in my range, so I decided to bump it up to $12 and next act put in the call. When it gets to the older gentleman on the button, he decides to 3-bet it up to $35. And of course I know he's going to have a premium here of jacks through aces, ace king seldom, but definitely within those high pocket pairs I just named. But to a laughably small 3-bet, I have to call. And in some crazy games, I would 4-bet bluff here. However, in this 1-3 game, this is suicide. So I just decided to put in the call, and the player to my left decides to come along as well. So us three see a flop of king 10 6, 1 spade. So I flop middle pair with backdoor straight and flush draws. And if he did happen to raise with ace king, he has hit. But if he had jacks or queens, then he won't love his spot with 2 callers. However, I decided to check and flow, and when it gets to him, he quickly checks. Once he does that, I know he doesn't have ace king or aces, because those hands would bet here almost all of the time. The only strong holding he could have here that plays the way he just played it is top set of kings trying to be trappy. So what's more likely is him having the aforementioned jacks or queens. So on the 3 turn, I decided to put out a bet of $50, which is about half pot size. And I'm just hoping that the player in between us folds, because he could reasonably have a king and just checked on the flop to the aggressor as a standard. However, when he tinks fold and now the button calls, I'm not too worried about him calling, because I figured it would take 2 bets to get him off of jacks or queens. Unfortunately, one of the worst card hits on the river, it is a king. So now it makes my hand so much more unlikely to be having one, because there's 2 on the board. Whether he knows that or not, I'm not sure of, but I just decided to check, and of course he has queen queen. And just as a thought, what do you think about me making an insane all-in overbet play on the river? Comment below. So this hand is not like a huge pot or anything like that, but I just want to show you a live dynamic. We have ace-6 of spades, and there's an under the gun raise to $15. So when it folds to me, I decided to put in the call, and we're going heads up to a flop of deuce 3 jack with 2 hearts. And when I check like I'm supposed to, the raiser decides to check as well. So now the turn is a 9 of hearts. So obviously we have 2 spades, ace-6 of spades. So we have nothing. We're completely with this whole flop and turn. However, we know that our opponent, if he had an overpair, he would have bet the flop, just being the eraser. And also, if he had a flush draw, he would put in a bet as well. So because he did neither of those things, this is a great spot to just put in a bet and take down the pot. A lot of times I'll see live players just check, 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 and then try to get the showdown and then end up getting beat by a better ace high. So this was just a quick little dynamic of just betting when your opponent shows weakness. So in this hand, we look down at jack 7 of hearts. I'm in a small blind, and it limps to me, and I decided to just put in the limp. This is not normally a play I like to do. However, I'm at a passive table, so the big blind is most likely just going to check. And of course, the big blind hears my inner thoughts and decides to raise to $15. The low jack calls and it folds to me, and I decide to say fuck it and call as well. So we are off 3 ways to a flop, which is king 3-8 with all hearts. So haha, we flopped the flush. And now I decided to check, and the big blind player puts out a bet of 26. So this folds out the low jack, and now I'm wrestling with the decision on if I want to raise or call. I actually like raising more here, because if he has in king for top pair, he's really not going to think that I have a flop flush. He's going to think that maybe I have the ace of heart, especially if he doesn't have a heart. And he'll more than likely call a raise to 90 in this spot. So either way, I just decided to get trappy and call, and I get tortured on the turn by another heart. So I'm not really expecting that I'm beat here, although it is possible. But I do know that this is going to kill the action significantly, and my suspicions are proven correct when he only bets 25 when I check to him. So obviously, this is where I would like your input. Should I raise here or just flat call? The problem with flat calling is the river is going to go check, check 100%. The problem with raising is that I'm only going to get action from an ace or queen of hearts, which beats me, and the rare set that will hope to boat up on the river. But as played, I decided to raise to $100, and he quickly folds. So let me know in the comment section how you would have played this hand, but we're moving on to the next one. So here we are. I'm going to show you a hand that I really just played like shit. So we have 4-5 of spades in the small blind, and there's a limp to me. And I decided to raise to $15, and only the cutoff decides to call. So we're going heads up to a flop, which is 4, 8, 9. So we have bottom pair, and for some reason I decided to check. I was thinking that it didn't hit my range, so I should check here. And we were off to a turn, which is a 3. And now he decides to bet out for $15. And my instinct was telling me that I should be putting in a raise here. So unfortunately, I don't decide to go that route, and I just call thinking that my hand is best. And we are off to a river, which is an ace. And now on this card, I decided to lead out for $40, which is what I would do if I did hit an ace. And he tanks for quite a while, and then he calls. And so I'm thinking that he heroed me down with like an 8 or a 9, and I show my 4-5. And he actually shows me that he had ace queen and just limp called with it. But however, he played the hand better than I played the hand, so I can't be mad at him. Obviously, pre he should raise, but on the post flop way, he played his hand a lot better. When I checked to him on the flop, he bet the turn because I showed weakness, and then he got there on the river, and then he called my bluff. So can't really be mad at that. I got outplayed. I played it poorly myself. So we got to move on and see if we can shake back. Now we're sitting with a higher suited connector and the 6-7 of diamonds on the button. And we faced a $20 raise. This lady wasn't especially aggressive, so I didn't even consider a 3-bet, just trying to call and hit. So we're in position and we decided to call, but this does bring in the small blind and the big blind along. So we're going 4 ways to a flop in position off to a jack 9-8 flop with 1 diamond and 2 spades. So we flop open-ended. However, the 10 is a dangerous card because any queen would have a higher straight. So when it checks to me, I decide to just check since the small or the big blind could have a decently strong hand here that connect with this board, and just decided to check to the lady who raised pre-flop. So we're off to a turn, which is a card that improves us dramatically, but still very scary, an offsuit 10. So no flush card, but however, we have the straight, but now any queen is going to be beating us. So I do have a bad feeling about this, and even more so when the small blind player leads out for 55 bucks. It folds to me, and I already hate this spot. I ask him what he has, and he's just laughing. That's so damn strong. However, I decided to play what's called Fifth Street Chicken, which is basically calling on the turn, making it appear as if you're going to call the river 100%, and if he actually does jam, you fold. And especially when you only have $78 left, which is what he has, I'm telling him that he has no fold equity to bluff the river. So we're off to a river which changes nothing. It's a deuce, and now he goes all in. And I thought I could just fold turn, but now I'm 90% sure I need to fold this river. But I'm getting such an incredible price. I have to call $78 to win a pot of $350 once my money is in. So I only have to be right here with a straight a little bit more than 20% of the time for this to be a profitable one. However, people so under bluff here in 1-3, and I already called his turn bet, so he has to know that I'm likely to call river. So even a set or 2 pair would check and see what I do here. It's pretty clear that any 7 or queen makes a straight. So I decide to make some more table talk with our friend. So let's listen in. What do you have?
I have a queen. Is that good enough?
Huh?
A queen is good enough?
You have a queen?
Yeah.
Do you really?
I don't know. You ask me, I tell you.
Okay, all right, then I fold. I fold. You really had it?
Wow. Lucky didn't have no diamond.
So obviously, as you see, he did have the queen, so we made the good fold. But the table talk did reward us with the information, but he was absolutely right. There's no point in asking him what he has, and when he tells me, I don't believe him. So do you think that I should have just folded the turn, or do you like my idea of calling the turn, and then if he jams the river, fold like I did? Let me know. So this is a pretty neat hand. We're nursing a short stack of $90 because the last couple of hands crippled us. Either way, we raised under the gun to $15, and when it folds to the Spanish Pro on the other side of the table in the small blind, he decides to bump it up to 40, and I know he's confident to know that his normal raise here would be like 60 or 70. However, he's looking at my stack, and I know he doesn't want me to fold, so I don't have very much. So that small raise is going to guarantee that, and I'm not going to fall for the trap and go all in, so I just call. We're heads up to a flop, which is King Deuce 5 with 2 clubs, so we now have the nut flush draw and an overcard. Obviously, our ace could not be good if he has ace king, and so now he does something funny, and he checks. And I go all in. There's nothing to think about here, and he snap calls. So I know I'm behind. I don't know what he has, but then I show my hand, and he shows his. He has pocket aces. So obviously we're only drawing to our flush outs, and we get immediate service in the 6 of clubs on the turn. And obviously he's drawing dead. Even the case ace won't save him. So we hold and we win, and now we have a stack of close to $200. And he leaves shortly after this. I guess he didn't like the bad beat, but hey, it is what it is. I'll take it. Let's go. Spoiler alert, this is the last hand of the 1-3 session. So we raised it up to $15 with ace-jack from middle position, and the cutoff and the button decide to call. The flop is ace-queen 10 with 2 spades, so we do have top pair, decent kicker, and a gut shot to the Broadway straight, and we also have the jack of spades in case it does become necessary. So now I check because I know the player on the button is very aggressive and he's always bet when checked to. So when it gets to him, he decides to put out a smaller bet than I was planning, only $25. But I still go with the plan and I rip it all in for $130 total. And the player to my left says that I took his play, but he still calls, so I don't know what that's about. And the button player gets out the way, so now we're off to a heads up, and the turn is a spade giving me a flush draw, and the river is an ace giving me trips. So feeling decent about my hand, but that's all moot when our opponent shows 6-8 of spades for the turn flush. And of course it sucks because I'm thinking I'm getting stacked, but I did have him covered by just a little bit. And I get left with a disrespectful $30 left in my hand. So after this hand, I decide to leave and go play blackjack downstairs until I get called for 2-5. So we're going to resume back at the 2-5 session, but just know there's a blackjack session in between this. Unfortunately, I can't film the table games, but maybe in the future that might be something I do try to do. But anyways, let's just move on to the 2-5 session. Let's see what happens. All right, so we're just going to go over a couple hands that I played on the app. So as you see, we have ace queen on the button. There's a $12 under the gun raise. So when it gets to us, we raise it up to 60 because there's one call in between. And we are off to a flop of queen 9-9. It looks pretty good. We decided to put out a c-bet of $65. And at this point, our opponent decides to make a 3x raise. And to this sizing, I think that this opponent could have pocket jacks, pocket tens, just putting me on ace king solely and wants to equity deny, and I decide to rip it all in. I get snap called by 8-9 of diamonds, so I really don't like my play. When I rip it all in, that's going to guarantee a fold from those hands I just mentioned and only get action from hands that have me beat. So unfortunately, we lose a big pot here, but we have a couple more. All right, so we're just going to go over a couple hands that I played on the app. So as you see, we have ace queen on the button. There's a $12 under the gun raise. So when it gets to us, we raise it up to 60 because there's one call in between. And we are off to a flop of queen 9-9. It looks pretty good. We decided to put out a c-bet of $65. And at this point, our opponent decides to make a 3x raise. And to this sizing, I think that this opponent could have pocket jacks, pocket tens, just putting me on ace king solely and wants to equity deny, and I decide to rip it all in. I get snap called by 8-9 of diamonds, so I really don't like my play. When I rip it all in, that's going to guarantee a fold from those hands I just mentioned and only get action from hands that have me beat. So unfortunately, we lose a big pot here, but we have a couple more. All right, so in this hand, we have 8-9 of spades, and we raise under the gun to $12. We get one caller, and we're just going heads up out of position to a flop. And the flop is above average. We flopped the absolute nuts in a 5, 6, 7 board. So on this board, I decided to bet. And even though this doesn't hit my range, because it hits my absolute hand, I'm going to bet nonetheless. And hopefully our opponent will be wise enough to see that it doesn't and maybe put in a raise. So either way, we put in the bet and we get called and we're off to a turn, which is the 8. So obviously it's kind of like a bad card because it puts 4 to a straight. Any 9 makes a straight. So of course I do have the 9, but I could be chopping here sometimes. But also it could scare away the action. But because this should be much better for him, I'm still going to bet thinking that he might put in a raise from time to time. So we put out a bet of $63, damn near pot, because a flush draw does come. And he decides to raise, but it's to a very small amount, 126, a min raise. So this is indicative of maybe having a flush draw and just wants to see if they can get me to fold, or they could have a 4 because any 4 is a straight as well. So I just decided to call hoping not to see a club, but unfortunately we see the 10 of clubs. So obviously we're going to check and flow to the raiser, and they put out a very small bet of $150. So for that price, if you have a flush, you have a flush, or if we're chopping, we're chopping. So I stick in the call, and our opponent has ace king with the king of club, and they were just bluffing. I guess they really did think that that board was better for them as the caller than it would be for me as the raiser. But unfortunately, we flopped the nuts and we held on to win this hand. So one last hand to go over. We have pocket ace on the button. There is a hijack raise to $13, one call in between. So when it gets to me, I decide to put in a good 3-bet with pocket ace who's $65. And when it gets around to the original raiser, he decides to stick in the call. So we're going to a flop of queen jack 6, and when he checks to me, I decide to put out a bet of $65. That's the size that I would go with any hand here. So this is pretty standard, whether I have pocket kings or if I have pocket ace like I do here. 65 is the bet, and we get called. So now we're off to a turn, which is a 4 of diamond, which does bring in a backdoor flush draw, which could become relevant because our opponent could have a hand like ace jack of diamonds or something of the sort. So now when he checks, I decide to size up just a little bit and bet $185. That's about a 65-70% pot bet. And once again, he puts in the call. And now we're off to a river, which is a 10. So now if we had ace king, we are now home. So when he checks, I'm looking at how much that I have left, and I have 698. The pot is 650. So of course, if I did have ace king, or if I had pocket kings or queens, I would be ripping it all in here. So with a bluff, it's no different. We rip it all in, and he does tank for a second, but however, he does decide to put in the fold. So that was a couple recent hands that I played on the app. If you want to jump on the app, just let me know. My information is in the description. You can always contact me. I'll get you into the games. There's lots of bonuses for joining. Just let me know and I'll get you started. Now let's get back to the felt. So as a lot of you may already know, I was a participant at a bad beat table where one opponent flopped a straight, the other person flopped a set of nines, and they both got it all in on the flop, and the turn was the jack of heart, river was the 9 of hearts, giving the flop straight a runner straight flush, and then the set of nines rivering quad nines. The funny thing was the guy who had the straight flush didn't even know he had a straight flush and almost mucked his hand before last minute intervention. He decided to table his hand, and we all recognized it as a bad beat. So the table share was several thousands of dollars, so I'm very happy at the result. I'm going to cue in a little chip porn for you right now, and if you want to count up and see how much exactly it was, go for it. But this was an amazing situation. I'll talk a little bit more about it in the outro, but let's just get to the 2-5 session. So we are now at the 2-5 table. In case you're wondering about the blackjack session, I bought in for $200. I cashed out for $400. So we profited $200 of the $300 that we lost at 1-3, and we buy in for $800 here at the 2-5 table. So anyways, there's a raise to $20, and I 3-betted to 60 with pocket kings. So now we're going heads up in position to a flop of 7-9-5. So we obviously have an overpair, no ace on the board, and when he checks to me, I decide to do a small down bet to $55, and he quickly decides to put in the call. We're off to a turn, which is a 10, which is obviously going to be way better for him than it's going to be for me. He could have all of the 2-pair, all of the pair plus straight draws that even if I bet and I'm good, he can put a lot of pressure knowing that his range is going to be better on this board than it is for me. So I decided to check it back for pot control, and we are off to a river, which is a 8. This obviously sucks a lot because now any 6 makes a straight. There's so many 2-pair combinations, set combinations, straight combinations. So at this point, I'm not really loving it, but he puts out a bet of $75. In relation to the pot, his $75 bet brings the pot up to $400. So I got to call 75 to win a pot that's going to be $475 when it's all said and done. So getting such a good odds, and I do have an overpair. I just decided to call, not thinking I'm going to be good all of the time, but he does show ace-10 pretty quickly. So he wasn't bluffing, but we do have a hand that does beat that. So we turn over the kings, and we win. It's nice to win the first hand of 2-5. Here's just another quick hand, just as like a live exploit that I see a lot of people making this mistake a lot of times. So I raise pretty much under the gun with 9-10 of diamonds, and I get 2 callers. And we go 3 ways to a flop, which is king 7-3 with 2 clubs. So on this board, a lot of people get scared that somebody's going to have a king because they don't have it. But at the same time, you got to remember you're playing your range and you're not playing your exact hand. So I put out a c-bet of 40, which is the price that I would do if I had any flush draw or if I had a king myself and they both decide to fold. So just like a quick note that even if you don't hit, but the cards that hit the board hit your range per se, it's still a good idea to put out a bet. Obviously, if they call, you can evaluate what to do on the turn. But once you check the flop, then it leads for them not to believe your line on the turn. So just a little note, quick hand. Let's move on to the next one. So now we are off to the biggest hand of the session. We have pocket aces under the gun and we raise to $20. And it folds all the way to the small blind who 3-bets us up to $55. Now this player has been tilting off his stack, so I could just call and be sneaky in position, but I decided to 4-bet this up, trying to get him to commit as much money as possible before we get to the flop. So I bump it up to $200 and he decides to quickly call. When he calls, I'm thinking that he could have a hand like ace king, ace queen, even though I'm double blocking those hands, but more likely a hand like pocket tens, pocket jacks, pocket queens of the sorts, and every once in a while even pocket kings, just not wanting to see an ace on the flop. So we're going heads up and the flop is 6-3 deuce. Pretty great flop because he's not going to have 4-5 or pocket sixes very often. If he does, then he's just going to get a double up. What's funny about this hand is he leads out for $175. Obviously, I'm not going to go anywhere, and of course, I could think about putting in a raise, but I think there's just no point because he's likely to have dust here. So I want to keep all of his bluffs in. So I just call, and we're off to the turn, which is a deuce, pairing the bottom card, which is not really a needed card because I don't think he's going to have 6-3 or 3 deuce or pocket deuces or anything like that. But still nice to see the bottom card pairing, though. So now he still keeps up the aggression and now bets $250. He doesn't have that much left behind, but there's no point. I'm not scared of any card. Like if he has pocket jacks or pocket queens, he's not going to fold. So there's no point in folding out the hands that are bluffs that he might have. Like he could have a hand like 9-10 suited, just calling the hit and is bluffing now. So at this point, I'm just going to play it chill, just call. And we're off to a river, which is a 9, and he decides to rip it all in. I think for maybe 1 second, but then put in the call. And he shows that he has ace queen for just dust. So pretty much that all in was $300. So altogether we made about $900 of profit from this guy just from being in position and just calling. If we raise, I think we make a lot less. We let him get off the hook. So that was a monster pot, over $1,800 pot. Let me know if you would have played it any differently, or do you think I played it about as perfectly as you could in this situation? So that is it for the video. If you've made it this far, please like, comment, and subscribe. This was the biggest win by far that I've ever had. Just to do the totals from this video, from the sessions that I played, the app, and the bad beat, all of that total, this video, I am at a profit of a little bit over $11,000. That is the best in any video by far that we've had. And it's the best run that I've had ever in my life. Like I said, there's a couple other sessions where I've won, but I'm not including it in this results. But just know, the downswing that I was on, I've won all that money back plus double. So it's been a great ride, and it just lets me know that, you know, you got to stay confident in your game. When you know you've been a winning player for years, just keep at it and just keep grinding and things will turn around. So that's what happened. I'm so appreciative. I'm also appreciative for everyone that seen me at MGM, Maryland Live, and gave me the support through my downswing and told me to keep at it, keep on making these videos. Definitely appreciate it. You gave me extra motivation to keep going, and it all turned around for the good. So I do want to parlay these profits into playing a lot more 2-5 and 5-10s, taking some shots at least. And there's a few games that I'm scoping out that I'll jump into real soon, and it's going to be a very exciting moment for me. And just want to say thank you once again. If you have any questions, I've had a lot of people that just reach out to me just to ask my opinion about poker hands, about advice about casinos in the area. So don't feel shy to reach out to me through my phone number that's in the description or Telegram. Just hit me up, and I'm decent to talk to. You know, I'm willing to have a consultation with you if you're having a little trouble with your poker game, give you some words of advice. So appreciate everybody, and until the next video, holla.